Good morning, friends. This recording is an example of the parallels so that you know exactly what it is that you ought to be doing with these biblical parallels. I've chosen the story of the death of Saul and his sons as an example. Notice that the story is told in 1 Samuel 31 verses 1 to 13 and 1 Chronicles 10, 1 to 14. For the most part, at the beginning of the story is the same. So for instance, here on the left-hand side, we're told that the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines, and many fell on Mount Gilboa. That is identical to what appears in 1 Chronicles. We don't really have any differences in the first 4 verses. The first difference that appears, that I notice, is in verse 6. In 1 Samuel we are told, so Saul and his 3 sons and his armor bearer and all his men died together on the same day. For some reason, the detail of the armor bearer is omitted from the account in 1 Chronicles. Continuing, here in 1 Samuel 31, in what is highlighted in yellow, we read, when the men of Israel who were on the other side of the valley and those beyond the Jordan saw that the men of Israel had fled. That detail about the people beyond the Jordan is omitted in the chronicler account. Doesn't appear to be a major difference, but that is important, and those are the kinds of things that you should be looking for. Verse 8 is the same. Verse 9, there's a major difference between the two accounts. So in 1 Samuel, we are told they cut off his head, stripped off his armor, and sent messengers throughout the land of the Philistines to carry the good news to the houses of their idols and to the people. This is referring to the Philistines cutting Saul's head. The rendition of that story in 1 Chronicles omits the fact that the Philistines cut Saul's head. Verse 9 simply reads, they stripped off his clothes, or stripped him off, and took his head and his armor. So that is a major difference. Again in verse 10, 1 Samuel, they put his armor in the temple of Astarte, and they fastened his body to the wall of Beshan. That is in 1 Samuel 31:10. In 1 Chronicles we read, they put his armor in the temple of their gods, and fastened his head in the temple of Dagon, or Dagon. That is a major difference, right? Notice that the account in 1 Samuel actually mentions a temple of Astarte, Astarte is the same as Asherah, it's the same entity. 1 Samuel suggests that there is a temple to Astarte, and 1 Samuel also says that the body of Saul was fastened to the wall of Beshan. If we move over to 1 Chronicles, the chronicler omits the mention of the temple of Astarte. It simply says that the armor was put in the temple of their gods, and it is the head that is Saul's head that is fastened to the temple of Dagon. Difference between the body in 1 Samuel and the head in 1 Chronicles. Verse 10, or rather 11, is the same in both renditions of the story. We have a major difference in verse 12. In 1 Samuel, we're told that the men of Jabesh set out to rescue Saul, right? So they cross the Jordan at great risk. They actually enter Philistine territory, recover the bodies, and then they burn them. The men of Jabesh burned the bodies of Saul and his sons, and later then we're told that they buried them. But the detail of the burning is omitted, as you can see from my ellipses here, right? There's no mention that the men of Jabesh had actually burned the body of Saul and his sons. It's a major omission, right? It appears that the chronicler, who is the author, the hypothetical author or editor of First Chronicles, is omitting, for some reason, the fact that the people of Jabesh burned the bodies of Saul and his sons, and that is because in ancient Israel, burning a body was considered kind of tragic. It was not desirable. But the two texts do coincide here. You can see it in the highlight in blue, that in both accounts, both in 1 Samuel as well as in 1 Chronicles, the bodies are buried under an oak or a tamarisk, and the people then fast for 7 days. Finally, here there is a major difference in the chronicler, as we're actually given sort of an editorial as why this fate had fallen to Saul and his sons. We're told, so Saul died for his unfaithfulness. He was unfaithful to the Lord in that he did not keep the command of the Lord. Moreover, he had consulted a medium seeking guidance and did not seek guidance from the Lord. Therefore, the Lord put him to death and turned the kingdom over to David, son of Jesse. So this editorial does not appear in 1 Samuel and is a major difference between the two stories. So for the chronicler, the reign of Saul is utterly tragic. It was kind of a mishap in the history of Israel, and the chronicler actually looks forward to the reign of King David and his descendants. So as you can see, there are some minor differences, although the differences that do exist are important. And the major difference, of course, is the editorial comment that is put at the end of the two stories. So those are the kinds of things that you should be looking for in this exercise in parallels. You're taking a story and looking for its parallel, and sometimes you may have one or more parallels to one story, and then you're looking across to see what the similarities, but more importantly, the differences may be.